Electronic Specifier.
Welcome to Electronic Specifier Insights, the podcast for electronics engineers. I'm your host, Paige West. In today's episode, I speak with Luke Fitzpatrick, Aerospace and Defence Director for EMEA at Rochester Electronics. We speak about the aerospace and defence industry and how Rochester supports its customers in this field. Luke highlights the unique challenges faced by aerospace and defence customers when sourcing components, as well as what he thinks will be the emerging trends in aerospace and defence electronics influencing the industry in the next 5 years. We hope you enjoy this episode. Let's get started. Hello everyone and welcome back to Electronic Specifier Insights. Happy New Year to all of our listeners. And today I'm pleased to be joined by Luke Fitzpatrick, who is the Aerospace and Defence Director for EMEA at Rochester Electronics. So thanks very much for joining us, Luke. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. So as you said, Luke Fitzpatrick, Director of Aerospace and Defence at Rochester Electronics in EMEA. My background has always been electronic components. So I came into the industry in, I think it was 1998 with Aero Electronics and spent, say, about 6 or 7 years in distribution. Then moved to another distributor for, again, around 10 years, I think. That was more focused on logistics, on problem solving and on obsolescence. Before then going back to Aero Electronics for another 5 or 6 years. So all in, about 26 years in the industry and about 20 years dealing with aerospace and defence.
Excellent. So you're the perfect person to talk to today.
Hopefully so.
So most of our listeners are very familiar with Rochester, but why don't you give us a bit of a company overview?
Yeah, sure. So we were founded in the early 80s by our owner, Kurt Gerish. We're still a family-owned company. And how we came to market was there was a need identified where manufacturers were potentially scrapping or not using stock once they were made obsolete. And we saw an opportunity the market still needed support, and there was an opportunity to take that stock once obsolescence had happened and continue to serve the market and the customers that needed that support and that longevity. So over the years, we've evolved. We're now authorized distribution. We are manufacturing, and we have the manufacturing facility in Newburyport, Massachusetts, where all of our distribution facility, manufacturing, test, and long-term storage are. So yeah, we've evolved over the years. We also have manufacturing services today. So we manufacture semiconductors. So if there's anything as part of that process of manufacturing semiconductors that our customers need to dip into as such, then we can provide the associated services for them as well.
Fantastic. So obviously today we're going to focus on the aerospace and defence industry and how the company supports its customers in this field. So why don't you outline the role that you play in supporting customers in the aerospace and defence industry? Yeah,
sure. So within aerospace and defence, there is, and electronic components specifically, there's a big problem. That problem is that the life cycle of a defence or an aerospace application tends to be 20, 30, 40, 50 years plus. The life cycle of a semiconductor on average now can be around 10 years, depending on the technology. So therefore, where we are positioned is to extend the life cycle of the semiconductor for that customer to meet their production requirements over 20, 30, 40 years. The way that we can do that, different ways. One, it could be through strategic investment, where a manufacturer may make a part obsolete. We see that there's demand in the market, so we take a punt on that technology and we think we put it on the shelf and to serve the market. Needless to say, that works best when we're collaborating with our customer and we can understand what technologies they need long-term support on. So we can then make educated investments. There's also the manufacturing side of what we do. So when a manufacturer, an OCM, an original component manufacturer, makes an item obsolete, with some of the partnerships that we have with our supplier customers, we can take not only finished products to put on the shelf to support the market, but we can also take die and wafer in order to continue to manufacture that part under license. And the under license thing for me is the key here, because under license means we're extending the life of that semiconductor. We're not recreating anything. We're just under the original specifications of the original manufacturer, continuing to make that part. And if we can continue to do that, we can do it for as long as we need, the customer needs the support, as long as we have the die and the wafer in place to do so. So potentially then, if they have a 40-year program, 10 years into the program, an obsolescence occurrence happens, the customer will do a last time buy. The last time buy process for our customers is so difficult, so challenging, because how do they forecast if they've got 20 years, 30 years left on their program? How are they going to forecast what they're going to need? So this is where we get engaged with the customer and say, okay, you can do a last time buy for what you can see, what you can forecast, but then potentially there's a solution for us to have a manufacturing solution for the balance of that time to get it to the end of the life of the customer's application. And then there's the services side of our organization, which is really interesting, where we can actually take, if a part, let's use an example, a customer came to us this year with a part that had gone obsolete. It was actually an ASIC, so a specific part which went obsolete in, I think it was 2016. They came to us and said they had done a last time buy. They thought that was going to be enough to suffice for the end of the program. However, as with many of our customers, especially in the aerospace sector, they came to us and said, we're having to extend the life of this application, not just by 1 or 2 years, but by 10 to 15 years. And that's down to the backlog that some of the big global aerospace companies now have. They've got backlog going out 10, 20 years. So with that means that they have to extend the life of the applications within those aircraft for longer than they expected to. So the supply chain would have done their last time buys to meet what they thought the forecast would be, but over 5-10 years that forecast changed dramatically, and they had a gap in production. They could see the gap coming where they were going to run out of stock. So together with our design team, we worked with the customer, we worked with the original component manufacturer to approach the original manufacturer to ask if they still had the design files that we would need to create this device, and the IP and the licensing in place to be negotiated. And we were able to in-house manufacture that part for the customer. So we'll start, as soon as they start running out of stock, will be when our actual our solution comes into play, and then we can support that customer again then for another 10 years. So that's in a nutshell the what we have to offer the defence industry.
So what would you say, given all you've said then, what would you specifically say are the unique challenges that you're addressing that these aerospace and defence companies are facing?
So first, I would say one of the major issues that they face, and one of the biggest challenges, is the traceability and authenticity of product. It's always going to be a challenge when obsolescence occurs, because they have to go somewhere to find the stock to fill the gaps. With Rochester, everything that we do is authorized. So, and that's important to say, because not only from a manufacturing point of view, our products, our solutions are licensed by the original manufacturer. Therefore, Rochester becomes the manufacturer, therefore 100% traceable. Also, all of the stock that we have on the shelf is 100% authorized by the original component manufacturer. So if a customer comes to us and asks us to source a part, unless we have it in stock, unless we have a manufacturing solution, there's no going and looking in the market trying to buy stock for us. Everything is driven by the manufacturers directly. So traceability and authenticity is a challenge for them. I think that the biggest challenge really is longevity and sustainability, and that's where obsolescence management comes into it. That's where we assist our customers. That's where we try and be collaborative and as open book as possible with them. I mentioned earlier on, where we invest in the future and the future stock that we hold, the future manufacturing solutions in place, the future investments we make in capability, we want that to be driven by our customer. So when it comes to obsolescence management, we want to work hand in hand with the customer, understanding where they see the critical parts on their systems, if they go obsolete tomorrow, these are going to be a headache in terms of a potential force of redesign or software challenges with a drop-in part. And we want to work with them in advance to say, okay, these are the critical parts. This is what we see coming in the market. And what's key about that for us is, and where we kind of unique in that aspect, is that because we're talking to the manufacturers about when they're going to make things obsolete, because you could have a discontinuation notice and you may notice that Rochester's name's on there. That's because we're talking to the manufacturers about potential solutions when they're going to make a product line obsolete. We're also talking, because we're manufacturing, we're talking to foundries, we're talking to lead frame manufacturers, packaging manufacturers. And what comes with that is knowledge, is intelligence. Mm-hmm. Many of our customers will use platforms to go out into the market and understand on their given list of bill of materials, if you like, where the risks are by identifying where the manufacturers are saying how many years till end of life of that product. And that's data, but we're talking intelligence. Mm-hmm. So we're talking about, okay, that's great to know, and it's valuable that you've got that information. However, we understand that, for example, lead frames, PLCC, let's use that as an example, the manufacturer, Amcor, of PLCC product is pulling away from that technology. Mm-hmm. So that's going to have a knock-on effect to certain manufacturers. So again, if we understand that and we can give this type of market intelligence to our customers, we can really together start to have a plan for their obsolescence on key programs.
Mm-hmm. So would you say it's this intelligence, it's this knowledge that really sort of distinguishes you in the market when it comes to obsolescence management? And what other distinguishing features does Rochester have that you would say makes you stand out from your competitors, say?
Yeah, the intelligence is key. It's unique. There's no one else positioned in the market like us. Mm-hmm. But also there's no one else positioned in terms of the end-to-end scope that we have. So whether that's from at the front end, obsolescence management really starts at design. So when we're talking to our customers about, okay, how do we mitigate the risk of obsolescence, we're not just talking to them at the point where the part's gone obsolete. We're talking to them in advance. We're saying, okay, this is the layout of the board design. Here's what we see coming in terms of some of the risk coming, making suggestions there. There are certain manufacturers that we partner with, which at the front end, we can say to our customers, okay, the processor, yes, you may see that as the big risk because it's the big cost driver. You'd have, if it was to go obsolete, there would be hardware and software redesign potentially. But around that, you've got things like memory product. So we're partnering with manufacturers of memory who aren't driven by the latest and greatest technology out there. They're supporting the legacy technology, and it's within their I guess company directives that they don't want to make product obsolete. They don't want to continually design in the next best thing. They want to give customers the longevity that they need. So it's those type of people that we're partnering with, manufacturers that we're partnering with at the front end. So it begins at design, mm-hmm. And then all the way through our stocking profile, 12 or 10 billion products we've got on the shelf, 12 billion die that we have in order to manufacture up to 70,000 different parts, the stock that we have, the manufacturing capability, and then the services on the back of it, so that if nothing else is available in terms of a solution, actually we can talk to our design team and see if there's a solution on the back end. So it's really from the very beginning at design right the way through to the end of the products, our customers' applications life cycle. We've got support and touch points right the way across, and that's what I think really sets us apart.
Fantastic. So I'd like to chat a little bit about the market now, the aerospace and defence market. I'm interested to hear what you see are the most pressing issues that aerospace and defence customers are facing in securing, a reliable supply chain for their components. Given we're in 2025 now, so we're 5 years from the COVID-19 pandemic, which caused major supply chain issues. So I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that.
Yep. So I would say, first and foremost, obsolescence. It's always coming.
Yeah.
The market can do what it likes in terms of a life cycle or in terms of the market cycle, and it is cyclical, but obsolescence is consistent no matter what the market's doing. It may be accelerated by the market cycles. It may be that manufacturers rationalize their production and their capability to focus on a different type of technology, and that's as a result of the cycle, which may then force obsolescence. But you can't make obsolescence obsolete, so it's always going to be there. So that's the first thing. I would say that over the last, and you mentioned the COVID period, and obviously the allocation that the industry went through. What happened as a byproduct of that was, because everybody was desperate for stock, their supply chains were really opened up, and customers approved many more distributors than they had prior. So what that means is now we're going through a stage, and our customers are going through a stage then of rationalizing that supplier base again, because they had to approve people because they needed the stock, and now bringing that back to, and the key is having the collaborative partnerships and making sure that those partnerships are for the right reasons, cover the right scope, and also looking at collaboration within your supply chain. You're not going to be able to have a one-stop shop solution that's going to mitigate all risk or have access to all solutions. So it's important to try and put the right suppliers in place, and make sure you're mitigating risk by doing so, and but also reducing them at the same time. That makes sense.
Yeah, and speaking of mitigating risk, I mean the aerospace and defence industry, they have quite stringent requirements. So how do you ensure compliance with sort of the industry specific standards and certifications that are required?
Yeah, I mean that's life for us. We, through our all of our offices, but also and specifically our Newburyport facility in the US, we've taken moves to onshore all of our manufacturing capability to make sure that it's all in the US, and that's driven by recent geopolitical events, I would say. And in doing so, that's kind of the focus for all of the audits and everything that we go through. We audit ourselves internally. We obviously have customer audits, which we always try and encourage our customers to come and audit us. But then there's all of the certifications that we have to go through that you were alluding to, and that could be aerospace standards, automotive standards, because we have automotive customers and building automotive product. And those aerospace standards may be driven by quality, process, and security. And security, things like Cyber Essentials, Cyber Essentials Plus, which we have for our UK business, but also sustainability. More and more important now for our customers is the sustainability aspect. You know, they're ultimately within the defence industry, their end customer are the governments, and the governments want to make sure that they've got a sustainable supply chain and everybody's doing the right things ethically. So all of those types of things are audits that we go through on a very regular basis. But you know what? It makes us better as an organisation. With every audit that we have to do, it's kind of we've got to overcome this, and as a result of that, it improves our processes. And I'm a firm believer of continual, never-ending improvement. So I think it's we welcome them. They're not always easy, but we absolutely welcome them. Yeah.
And what about things like counterfeit components? You know, that's a major concern in any industry, but I imagine in aerospace and defence even more so. So what are you doing to sort of make sure all your products are authentic and traceable and things like that? Yeah,
I mean, counterfeit is still an issue. It's an even bigger issue now because they're better at what they do. You know, especially with electronics. I mean, you can. It doesn't matter whether they're completely counterfeiting and recreating a part, or whether suspect counterfeit also includes parts that have been taken off of existing boards and refinished, repurposed, and then put back into the supply chain. Now, the risks of that, it's the part that the customer wants. So if you put it on a board It's going to work. But is it going to work under the temperature or the specifications of the original manufacturer's datasheet? Because you don't know what it's been through in its life to get there. If it's been taken off a board, there could be chemicals involved in that. And over time, those chemicals could take effect on the actual substrate of the part, and then maybe fine once you put it on the board. But then in the future and potentially in the field, you could have a major issue. So it takes many different guises now, counterfeit. It is continually a problem. For us, we operate under AS 6496, which is the authorized distribution counterfeit mitigation policy. And it's almost an easy one for us because, as I said before, we don't source product. We don't need to worry about the sourcing or where we're buying them from because everything's driven to us directly from the manufacturer.
Yeah.
So we often get asked by customers, okay, you have this stock on the shelf. Can you put it through AS 6081 or AS 6171 testing? Those just aren't applicable to us because the stock is traceable to begin with. We have capability to do testing much or further beyond those specifications because we're manufacturing semiconductors. However, they're just not they're not applicable. But it is the only way to really mitigate counterfeit is to buy from authorized sources. Yeah. And one thing I'd say there is the authorized source, specifically in the case of Rochester, a customer may be able to go onto the internet and see stock. However, what they won't be able to see is the capability to manufacture a solution. With the 12 billion die that we have, we can manufacture, almost 100,000 different part numbers. We can't list all the parts that we could manufacture because, it would be a never-ending list. And as soon as we put that out there into the ecosystem, people would be saying, oh, there's stock here, there's stock there. And we wouldn't want to create that false impression. But the point there is that unless we're being contacted by the customer, they won't know that we've got a manufacturing solution. So again, collaboration, communication is really key.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. And you mentioned geopolitical events earlier. I was wondering if you could sort of deep dive into that a little bit more and tell us how the geopolitical landscape is impacting sort of component sourcing for aerospace and defence customers in particular.
Yeah, I think it is having an impact. If we look at the amount of GDP that countries are allocating to defence production, it's increasing. It's increasing because of threat in certain areas. So investment is increasing. We'll see that over time, and we'll see there'll be a more demand for this type of technology over time. I think that it's obviously accelerating in places because of the conflicts. Mm-hmm. So many nations have lent equipment into certain theatres, as we call them today, and those won't come back. Mm-hmm. So it's replacing what we've used as well, which is going to drive some activity, and that's also going to drive there are systems in the field at the moment which should have gone obsolete as a system years ago, and be that missile systems or it could be a tank, a land system. They should have gone obsolete a long time ago, but actually now that there's immediate demand for those, they're having to be manufactured again, or manufacturing hasn't ceased. So we're seeing all of those types of things have a real impact on both short-term and long-term forecast in terms of component sales within the industry, and also I may have mentioned before, but with aircraft manufacturing, the order books for aircraft commercial aviation are higher than they've ever been. So every time there's a Paris Air Show or a Farnborough Air Show, and more orders we see in the media, more back orders are placed on the likes of Boeing and Airbus. That's essentially and potentially increasing the life cycle of the applications that are in those aircraft, because some of those applications aren't important enough to want to do a complete redesign and have the latest and greatest technology, because they work. It could be a system that monitors something. The only use for that system is to monitor one thing. It could be fuel consumption. It could be landing gear. That system works, and it'll work no matter what the rest of the aircraft. You can put new technology in different places, but there's certain systems they just want to maintain them. They don't want to have to redesign those systems. So the longer and the higher the back orders are, the more they're going to have to continue to extend those applications.
Well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, quite. Yeah.
And speaking of that, and seeing as we're at the start of a new year, I'm interested to hear what emerging trends in the industry that you think is going to influence, say in the next 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, you automatically, when you talk about technology and the way things are going, you think AI. Within aerospace and defence, I think that AI, there's still associated risk with AI in terms of a security perspective. But really, AI takes many different forms. And what I would say is that most systems that we see now, and certainly systems that our customers are designing, data is key. So they're pulling data from all different areas, whether it's on a commercial airliner or on a fast jet, on a land vehicle, on a submarine. There's data points pulling in data from all over, and sensors pulling in the data from all over the application. And what's done with that data is key, and that's where it's really evolving. Technology is really evolving. But then, another trend that we might see is again obsolescence. I keep coming back to it because it doesn't go away. Yeah. If some of these new technologies may force obsolescence in old technologies. So it may be a trend in automotive will actually influence the manufacturers to take a direction, which will then mean the defence companies and the product and technology that they use will be the first, because of the low volumes, be one of the first to be made obsolete, depending on the customers or the manufacturer's strategy. So we could see some obsolescence trends come out in the next 2 to 5 years as well.
So what do you think are going to be some of your biggest challenges and opportunities as Rochester Electronics in supporting your aerospace and defence customers?
I think opportunities, it's always around collaboration. The more we collaborate with our customers, the better we understand their needs, the better we can set ourselves up to support, a better chance that we have of having a solution for them in the future. If we look at our roadmap for technology, and we have one, we also have a roadmap for investment in terms of where we're going to invest next. You can look into that and see, okay, if Rochester's investing in this type of technology in terms of our manufacturing capability, then we must see something coming, obsolescence in that area, in that type of technology. And likewise with our capability matrix, if we're investing in a certain type of capability, it's because we see obsolescence coming in that area. And all of those investments, as I said before, can be driven by what our customers and what our suppliers, the gaps that they need us to fill. So that's always an opportunity for us. I think challenges are ongoing. I think we mentioned geopolitical. I think that can provide challenges. And it's really, the challenge for us is being able to react at the right time when obsolescence happens. Too often we're approached by a customer after they've done a last time buy. We're then scrambling to try and find a solution for them. If we were talking prior to the last time buy, prior to that obsolescence occurrence, we'll understand again what the customer needs, where we need to position ourselves, and then hopefully mitigate that challenge of it went obsolete a couple of years ago, we don't quite know what to do. We could be sitting there saying, we collaborated, Rochester invested, we now have a potential solution for this, and the chances of a solution increase. So,
well, thank you very much for your insights. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we wrap up?
I don't think so. I would say we're from an aerospace and defence perspective, we are exhibiting at DPRTE and DSEI. So and more than happy to do so. I think also I'd mention our investment within aerospace and defence. We're continually to invest in our greatest asset, which is people, and we're putting people into different regions to support A&D customers locally, and we'll continue to do so. So we've never been more ready to support the sector.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for giving us a deep dive into the aerospace and defence sector and for highlighting all the services that you offer. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this latest episode of Electronic Specifier Insights. Don't forget to subscribe to the series to keep up to date with our newest guests, and do share with fellow colleagues, friends and family who may be interested in the latest news from the electronics industry.
Electronic Specifier.